Hello again. I'm Tripp Rogers. He's the Hall of Famer Mike Scheck. We are the Fantasy Sultans, getting pumped up for week number 7 in the league where they play or pay. And Michael, week 6 certainly had our was another week of head scratchers and another week that just kind of, you know, making this fantasy football season tough. I mean, how many people are still alive in suicide pools because there is no rhyme or reason this year?
Yep. Well, for certain, I mean, we start with the curveballs that were thrown at us, and Indianapolis reported that their wide receiver Michael Pittman would go on IR with a back injury. So that kind of affected our perception of his fantasy value and other teammates like Josh Downs, Alex Pierce, and Adonai Mitchell.
Yes.
Now, here's what happens. Not only did Pittman not go on IR, he played on Sunday and logged 56 of 70 offensive snaps. Anthony Richardson is another player. He was dealing with a hip injury. They said he was trending to play on Sunday. Well, didn't happen. It was Joe Flacco again. A late scratch from New England Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson. So, I mean, we kind of get the feeling here, Tripp, that this is kind of like the COVID times all over again, where, testing kind of made things difficult and we didn't know who to start or play. The information was like all over the place. And I think it really goes to show that just because you're hearing something on a Friday or Saturday, that doesn't count. What counts is right before the game time. I mean, and that should be obvious, but people kind of forget about that. We've talked about this on the podcast many times. You have to set, don't set it and forget it with your lineup on Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning. You have got to be checking in with the late breaking news. And hey, you and I have both been caught with our pants down. We're offenders. It's happened to us too. So we're not excused from the situation. But I'll say this: that Sunday morning is where the information is critical.
And I want to. I hate to say this, but part of this is kind of the culture in the NFL, and I say this because teams don't really want you to know specifics. The NFL has certain guidelines that you follow. And listen, everybody wants to get news out first, so they're going to say something. And again, people will take it as gospel. And the Pittman story is a great example of it. But they didn't want them to know that, Pittman was going to play. And it's a game. It is a game that these teams play. I mean, realistically, listen, let's go to the Monday night game with Buffalo. How many people got Ray Davis? Chances are not many, because I know it's like he was owned in like 2% of the leagues.
Yeah.
Nobody went out and got him because Ty Johnson was the guy that they all thought would replace James Cook. But again, Cook was a late scratch. And, I can't emphasize, I know we're picking on him, but, well, he deserves to be picked on. Our buddy Mac, who listens every week, he got burned by this because James Cook went out. He needed Cook for 14 points. And I said, oh, we'll get 12 and then you'll lose. Well, James Cook was a scratch. So he went out and got Ty Johnson. He lost by 10. Had he gotten Ray Davis, he would have won. But he said, well, that's not what it said. And the other part of this is I've got to say this. You've got to have a couple of sources. There are free newsletters from a lot of fantasy people. And I will admit, we've talked about it. The Fantasy Guru is out there, and Fantasy Points is the website, and we use that for information. Football Guys, a great source for information. They got a free newsletter, so it keeps you up to date. I mean, that's basic. This is basic information you need. Speaking of Mac, I've got to tell you this story. So he decided he wanted to make a trade, and he wanted to include quarterback Geno Smith. Sent a trade proposal. Only one little problem. he sent it after 8:15 Thursday. So guess what? Geno Smith was locked in that week. He wanted a running back for that week. The trade proposal went through as it was. And usually trade proposals will get 2 weeks, 2 days to be reviewed. And if nothing happens, it goes by the wayside. Who's going to make a trade for a player who already played? Yeah, that was, I mean, you got to know when your kickoff times are and the players involved. I mean, geez.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned trades. I'm glad you mentioned trades, my friend, because we had a big story break this past week. That would be Davante Adams for the New York Jets. He moves over from Las Vegas to the New York Jets, traded there. And personally, for me, it's an upgrade for Adams to have a better quarterback. He comes, 3 games with the Raiders, 200 yards, 1 touchdown. Numbers should be a lot better for the wideout if he's healthy, of course. Now, he did not play since week 3 because he was dealing with a hamstring injury. So that's another concern that you're going to have to worry about. Hamstring injuries can be plaguing. We don't know how the situation, it could pop up at any time. It could happen over one game. It could happen over several games. I mean, you just see Justin Jefferson with his hamstring injury. So, a situation where I think the Jets are in a better situation. The outlook for Garrett Wilson, obviously, I think he's going to get decreased target share, but I don't think it should be significant. For those of you who have Alan Lazard, well, you're probably frustrated with him because he's been a roller coaster. One week he's good, the next week he's not. And I don't think that's going to change. But you know who benefits the most from this? Brock Bowers in Las Vegas. He's going to get more targets, and I think fantasy owners who have him are going to be pretty happy because I think the results from Brock Bowers moving forward is going to be better than what he's seen before. And he's got his share of the targets, but now no Adams in the mix. I think it's going to even be better.
But here's where I'm going to disagree with you on that one because it's been like that for a couple of weeks. And that's why Bowers has gone off. He is one of the top fantasy tight ends. So if you had him on your roster or you got him on your roster at some point after the draft, smart move. And Bowers, listen, am I surprised? I watched him in Georgia. He's that good. Yeah. And he went in all the drafts. So anybody who has Brock Bowers, you're right about that. I want to flip back to the Jets, though, because Davante Adams is a huge upgrade for them. I honestly think his hamstring is fine. I think part of it was he wanted out. I think they were trying to be nice and they weren't saying that. It gave him an injury. They put him on, hamstring, whatever. I'll tell you who really's taken a hit and deservedly so to a certain extent. Mike Williams. Mike Williams the Jets are looking to try and move out now. They signed him in the offseason. Remember, he came off knee injury last year, season-ending knee injury. And he is coming back, and he's looked awful. And Aaron Rodgers called him out in his press conference after the game. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. I understand that. But Mike Williams, I think, is on his way out for the Jets. But the other part of this is that I think it's going to help the Jet offense also. Because I think this gives them another target. And this is another piece, I should say. This is a win-it-all situation. The Jets are playing this. And the other part of this, and maybe this is subtle, but Adams comes with a contract. And that contract carries through next year. Do you think they would make this trade if they reasonably thought Aaron Rodgers is going to retire at the end of this year? You think this is an all-in for this year? Or could it be next year? They want to have Adams in the building for next year?
Yeah, I think so. I think they have that on the back of their mind, yeah.
I'm just saying that would be all right. Let us get to week number 7. First off, we've got a couple of buys. We've got Chicago and Dallas on bye. Hey, listen, you got Caleb Williams as your quarterback. Oh, that's bad. You got anybody on Dallas? Well, you saw what happened on Sunday. I mean, this has been a tough week for Dallas fans. It really has. Fantasy owners, this week is only a 2-team bye, so it's not as brutal unless you drafted a lot of Chicago Bears. You have the Bears defense, which is really good, or you drafted a lot of Dallas Cowboys, which if you did, you're not happy with your fantasy team either. So let's go import exports. Hall of Famer starts us off.
Well, with injuries like Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave, who's not going to play on Thursday night, Travis Etienne, Jerome Ford, you're going to need those replacements to step up. And I'm going to start with Los Angeles with the Chargers running back, Kameni Vidal. Now, on our draft special, I can't remember if we did this on our Fox sports radio show or if I mentioned it on the Fantasy Sultans podcast, but I said pick him up late. He would be a sleeper pick. Why? I just was not feeling J.K. Dobbins or the Gus Bus. Well, it turns out that the Gus Bus is on IR, so that kind of opens up the door for Kameni Vidal. And he had a nice performance last week. Vidal is a good option as long as Edwards is on the shelf, so he's one that you want to pick up. I'll keep it in L.A. with a potential stash candidate. That's Blake Corum, running back for the Rams. Now, Kyren Williams is a lead back, but the active rookie, Corum, well, he's salivating at the mouth like Pavlov's dog for any chance to show his abilities. And if you know Sean McVay any well, he tends to switch things up from time to time. Just see what happened with Cam Akers a few years ago when he switched up the running back room. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be the end for Kyren Williams. By far, Kyren Williams is going to be the guy. But at this point, he may be somebody you want to pick up for the future. Definitely stash him on your bench. You don't know if Kyren Williams is going to have an injury. You don't know what's going to happen with the Rams situation. So he's a player that you want to grab. Next player you'll want to import, Green Bay wide receiver Romeo Doubs. Now, Romeo found love, and it wasn't with Juliet last week. It was with Jordan. Yes, Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs had that great fantasy football love connection hosted by Chuck Woolery, 49 yards and 2 scores last week. Now, I know the Green Bay wide receiver room can be pretty unpredictable, and there's a lot to go around there. But this is an offense with players, with fantasy owners. They're going to want to roster. Green Bay is an offense you want to roster right now. And they also have Jaden Reed dealing with an injury. So he might be a guy you want to pick up is Romeo Doubs. Put those two together like matchmakers, but just don't tell Jaden Reed. All right, let's go on to a tight end that might be worth your while. Hunter Henry in New England. Now, last week, Henry produced a solid stat line with Drake May getting his first start, 3 for 41 and a tutty. That was against a pretty good Houston defense. Now, they draw a game with Jacksonville this week, and Jacksonville's been pretty abysmal this season. They got hammered by Chicago. Cole Kmet put up 70 yards and 2 scores. I wouldn't say this is a copy and paste the stat line to Kmet, but he's got a pretty good shot at having a good day against Jacksonville. Well, I did mostly imports this week. I'm going to shift my way to one export, and that is Indianapolis running back Trey Sermon. In the wake of Jonathan Taylor's absence due to injury, Sermon has an immediate issue, and his name is Tyler Goodson. Goodson is clearly outplaying him at this point. Now, he is getting more carries, more opportunities. He's just not putting up the yardage. So Taylor, well, it's questionable whether or not he's going to be back in the lineup this week. Earlier in the week, I was thinking, oh, yeah, but now they're saying they're not sure. So either way, I'm still not trusting Sermon moving forward to be effective for the Colts.
I agree. And that's one I did pick him up, and I think I let him go after 2 weeks because you did not see a whole lot out of Indianapolis. And, the other thing we'll mention about Indianapolis is they've had the bye. So that again, that's another, whereas you might want to keep him as a spot starter down the road. I don't know if he has any significant value. All right, I'm going to go import side, and I'm going to go with everybody's darling last Thursday night, Isaac Gurendo. I think I said that right, with San Francisco. Now, obviously, he has some value if Jordan Mason is out. And Jordan Mason is the guy who's replacing CMC. But right now, if you have CMC, you're not targeting him to come back until November. And even then, it's not a guarantee because, he's on IR. They then have to start the clock, the 3-week clock, and they haven't started it yet. So that's one of the things that the 49ers backfield, but they keep coming up with these guys. And Gurendo, of course, had that great run at the end of the game against Seattle, and he stepped in there for Jordan Mason. Now, if you got Jordan Mason and you got Jordan Mason as a handcuff to CMC, You want to have a third 49ers running back? I don't know. But Isaac
Yeah.
Guerrero is a hot topic on the waiver wire right now, and he would be somebody to grab. All right, I want to keep with the running back. Ray Davis in Buffalo. Now, this is one of the things, if James Cook continues to be out, he's got a toe injury. And for a running back, that is tough because, again, you've got to pivot, you've got to run on your toes, you've got to make some moves, and infected and a toe injury really hurts your mobility. And Cook is somebody who, if he's in there, I mean, he's definitely a fantasy starter. He's RB1, but this is a question mark. Ray Davis is somebody who probably is available because nobody had him rostered, and everybody was going to grab him because of the fact he played better than Ty Johnson. And I think he moves into the role if James Cook is out for a long time. But again, you've got to watch this, and also keep in mind the Bills have a late bye. They have a Week 12 bye. So if you get him and you're hoping to spot start him, just keep in mind that if Cook comes back, I don't know. I don't think Buffalo's going to rest him, but if Cook comes back, then Ray Davis is going to go back to sitting the bench. That's part of the issue. All right. Third running back I want to talk about is Ty Chandler with Minnesota. Again, you've got injury situations there. I think Aaron Jones is going to be out. As long as he's out, Ty Chandler is worth a spot start. Again, we're getting to the point in the season where pickings are slim when it comes to wide receivers and running backs. And sometimes it's better to get someone, put him on your bench, because a week or two down the road, he could pay dividends. And listen, Tank Bigsby, I think, is a great example, because I think we were on him early this season. We said, grab Tank Bigsby, and look what's happened. Travis Etienne is playing himself out. Bigsby is the back. Again, we're talking about Jacksonville, though. It's not exactly the greatest offense in the world, although you thought they would be better. But Ty Chandler's another guy who you want to pick up, and that's not a bad idea. All right, I want to flip over to some wide receivers. And, we talked about this, and we talked about the New England offense. And who's going to step up there? All right, Drake May is now in at quarterback. Demario Douglas, wide receiver, who, again, is available in a lot of leagues, has stepped up. He's Drake May's guy. So that's somebody you want to grab if you want to. And again, I don't know if this is something you want to move him in the starting lineup all the time, but when we're in bye weeks and you're scrambling for somebody, this is definitely a wide receiver one. Again, it's the New England offense, which is not exactly reminding us of, Air Coryell, but he's a guy you would want to have, and it would be good for depth. Now, I want to flip around to exports, and I think this is, I'm gonna go contrary, Green Bay, Dontavian Wicks. I mean, everybody was high on him, and they thought he'd be really good. But as you mentioned in your imports, he has not stepped up. In fact, he has shown he's probably out of favor with Jordan Love. And I think Dontavian Wicks is somebody you could drop, and you're not going to worry about it. Going back to the Jacksonville offense, another guy I've been very disappointed with this year. Christian Kirk came in, and they thought he was the wide receiver one in Jacksonville. Well, unfortunately, he's really done nothing. Of course, part of that could be Jacksonville. Part of that could be Trevor Lawrence playing so terribly too. But if you have him on your roster, and I'm trying to remember, I think I started him maybe 1 or 2 weeks when we started the buys, but he's not somebody I think he's lost his fantasy relevance. So goodbye. Thank you. Moving on. Speaking of moving on, we were talking about trades, and I want to run this one by you, or I want to run this by you because you're the Hall of Famer. I'm not. If the two names that have been floated around that I have been approached, because I happen to own Devontae Adams in one league, and then I have Amari Cooper in the other league. And it seems like somebody's knocking on my door for both of them. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, they just got traded. Yeah. I mean, I've had them all this time. You think I want to let them go? And if you're going to make a trade offer, how about making it realistically where it can help my team? And, unfortunately, I'm sure there are more trades in a league that is a league that you run, a dynasty league, because again, you keep players from year to year. But in a redraft league every year, if I didn't want them, I wouldn't have drafted them.
Yeah.
And why am I gonna trade them? And you never see trades because of that reason. It's like, yeah, how about a used bag of baseballs or a used bag of footballs and some old shoulder pads, and then you give me a wide receiver one, especially one that has just been traded to a good team. I don't know if the Jets are a good team. They are the Jets.
Yeah.
But still, Devontae Adams, you got to think he's going to do okay. You got to think, listen, and I want to just take that as Amari Cooper, same thing. He's going to a quarterback now. I mean, it's like night and day. It's like he's going from I was trying to think of a bad quarterback. And I can't think of one, but I mean, like a movie quarterback or something. Oh, the guy who's the quarterback in Longest Yard. Brucey. Going from Brucey to Adam Sandler. And Adam Sandler can throw the ball. Adam said Brucey couldn't do anything, it's the same thing. And that's what he's got to be feeling like, because, it's not happening with Amari, with Deshaun Watson. But anyhow, where I'm going with this, and taking a long way to go, but you got to look at trades and you got to think of how it's going to play, because, like I said, it's not helping me.
Well, it's not, what I was going to say is it may not be right for you, but it's right for the individual. And the other individual who's offering up the trade, I don't want to say he's pulling the wool over your eyes, so to speak, but, they're hoping that you're going to take the bait. And they know the situation. I mean, of course, Devontae Adams, we think he's going to do well. Of course, I mentioned the hamstring injury. Amari Cooper, well, he's got as you mentioned, an upgrade at quarterback.
Yep.
He's in a better offensive system.
Yep.
He's going to be there more for the long term. Cleveland didn't want him. It's obvious because the Brandon Ayuk trade, what they were willing to offer him to get Brandon Ayuk. So, I mean, that was pretty obvious that Cleveland was not all in on him. But again, from a trade spec, and that's what you think when you are offering a trade to somebody, you're hoping that they're going to take the bait. And in this case, you're smart enough, you're not going to take the bait.
And that's the other part of it. If you're going to make a trade, you've got to make it beneficial for the other guy. Don't just look at it as for your team. Yeah. And that's important. And also, you got to keep in mind, and when we sound like a broken record, I know we do, but we keep mentioning, you got to keep the buys in mind. If you're trading for somebody, if you're trading them somebody who's already had their buy, well, you're giving them a leg up, and you're getting a guy who has a buy coming up.
Yeah.
That's the other part of this. You have to think about those things, especially at this time of the year. You know what else you got to think about? You've got to think about, you want more of the Sultans? You want more on Sunday? Sunday with the Sultans is the answer. And the Hall of Famer will tell you how you can join them.
That's right. You can hear us on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey on 93.5 FM in Central Jersey, 1450 AM. And, of course, Fox Sports Radio Jersey Shore, down the Jersey Shore at 100.1 HD3 and 95.9 HD3, and always at foxsportsradionewjersey.com. Sunday with the Sultans, noon on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey.
And just so you know that we do give you, we tape 2 shows. So a lot of what we say on the Fantasy Sultans podcast, we do repeat, but again, since it's taped on Sunday, we do change the discussion a little bit, just so you know. And of course, if you want to get in touch with the Fantasy Sultans, it's very easy. FantasySultans@gmail.com. You can let us know. Don't forget about my other podcast, Tripp's Take. It is available in the same spots you can find this fine podcast, Spotify for podcasters and YouTube. Just search for Tripp's Take. If you like the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, give a 80s. Give a listen to WTRS Radio online. He's the Hall of Famer, Mike Sheck. I'm Tripp Rogers. We are here to help you navigate the rough waters of fantasy football. We get you through the currents, the tough currents of the buys. We give you the ideas and the tools to win your league, unless you're playing us, because, well, hey, there's a reason why we are the Fantasy Sultans.
And you are not.